In chapter 11, Daniel receives perhaps the longest, most detailed, and most amazing vision of his entire life. The heavenly messenger, who had been bringing revelations in previous chapters, now goes deeper into something that is impressive not only for its prophetic content, but for the accuracy with which it describes the kingdoms of the earth and their kings long before they even existed. The angel begins the vision by explaining that, after Persia's rule, 3 more kings would rise, but the 4th would be much richer and more powerful than the previous ones. This 4th king would stir up conflict against Greece, which would lead to the rise of a great conqueror, a powerful king who would rule with absolute power and conquer vast territories. This king, clearly identified in history as Alexander the Great, would have a grand but short-lived empire, as his early death would result in the division of the kingdom among his generals. So, we see that God revealed to Daniel, centuries in advance, not only who would rule, but also the destiny of those empires, showing that nothing happens outside of the control of the Most High. After Alexander's fall, the angel shows Daniel that his empire would not pass to his descendants, but would be divided into 4 parts, each given to one of his generals. Among these kingdoms, 2 would stand out: the kingdom of the south, linked to Egypt and ruled by the Ptolemies, and the kingdom of the north, linked to Syria and dominated by the Seleucids. The rest of the chapter is, in large part, a detailed account of the endless conflicts between these 2 kingdoms: political alliances, wars, betrayals, arranged marriages to consolidate power, but which ended in failure and bloodshed. The angel accurately describes what history confirms: battles between Ptolemies and Seleucids, broken alliances, and the constant impact on the Holy Land, which was right in the middle of these 2 powers. In other words, the land of Israel was the stage where the interests of these kingdoms clashed and God's people suffered the consequences. The messenger makes it clear that behind the politics and wars there was something deeper, an attack on the faithfulness of God's people. Many would be seduced by promises, riches, and influence, while others would be pressured by persecution. Among the kings who arose, the angel describes one in particular, an arrogant, insolent, and violent ruler who would defile the sanctuary, despise the Holy Covenant, and persecute the faithful. History shows that this king points to Antiochus Epiphanes, the Seleucid ruler who entered Jerusalem, forbade Jewish practices, tried to force the worship of false gods, and even defiled the Lord's temple, sacrificing unclean animals on the altar. It was a time of great trial for the Jewish people, a time when many abandoned their faith out of fear, while others resisted to the death, firm in their covenant with God. But the angel also reveals something powerful. In the midst of oppression and persecution, a group would rise to stand firm. He says, "But the people who know their God will be strong and do great exploits." This phrase is the heart of chapter 11, because it shows that, even when the world is in chaos, the secret to victory is not in armies or human alliances, but in the true knowledge of God. Those who know the Lord do not bend under pressure, are not corrupted by fear, and do not give in to the enemy's deceptive offers. The knowledge of God is not just information, but a deep relationship that produces courage and perseverance. That is what sustained the faithful in the days of Antiochus Epiphanes, and that is what sustains God's servants in every generation. The prophecy also points beyond immediate history. Many scholars understand that this arrogant king foreshadows not only Antiochus, but also the future Antichrist, who will rise in the last days with greater power and deception. He will exalt himself above all gods, sit as if he were God, and persecute the faithful people. This shows that the struggle described in Daniel 11 is not merely between Ptolemies and Seleucids, but represents a greater spiritual battle, the conflict between the kingdom of darkness and the kingdom of God. And just as there were faithful ones who resisted in the past, in the future there will also be those who will remain unwavering, because they know their God. As the angel describes these events, the message becomes clearer and clearer. Human kingdoms rise and fall, kings succeed one another, wars multiply, but all of them have an expiration date. Their dominion is limited, and none can stand before the sovereignty of God. The heavenly messenger shows Daniel that these kingdoms may seem invincible for a time, but the moment will come when their arrogance will be broken, their power will cease, and their memory will fade. What remains is the eternal kingdom, the dominion of God that will never end. This brings hope because it reveals that, even in the midst of crisis, corruption, and violence, there is a sovereign hand guiding history. This chapter is also a warning for us today. How many times do we let ourselves be brought down by the news, by wars, by political crises, and by the growing persecution against faith? Chapter 11 reminds us that none of this is new to God. He already knows history before it happens. He already knows the names of kings before they are born, and he has already determined the end of all human power. This calls us to an attitude of trust. If those who know their God stand firm, then we need to be part of that group. We need to deepen our relationship with him, seek intimacy in prayer, root our lives in his word, so that when pressures increase, we will not be moved. Furthermore, this text reminds us that true faith has a cost. Many at that time were persecuted, killed, and had their possessions taken for remaining faithful. But it is also said that through these struggles, many would be purified and strengthened. In other words, persecution does not destroy faith. It refines it. It is in the fire of trial that the true servants of God are revealed. And this is equally true today. The setting may change, the enemies may have new faces, but the essence is the same. The world seeks to corrupt, silence, and intimidate those who belong to God. But those who know the Lord do not bend, because they know that victory is already guaranteed in the eternal kingdom. In the end, the heavenly messenger shows that the end of that arrogant king is certain. He will be destroyed not by human hands, but by the judgment of God. This points to a greater truth. Evil can rise, it can reign for a time, it can seem invincible, but its fall is inevitable. God is the one who writes the last chapter of history, and the final victory belongs not to earthly kings, but to the Lord of hosts. This is the comfort and hope for all who live in difficult times. Nothing, absolutely nothing, escapes God's control. And, as this revelation concludes, Daniel understands that what was at stake was not just politics, but faith. God's people were at the center of the battle, because the kingdoms of the earth were not just fighting for power, but also against loyalty to the Lord. This vision was not given for Daniel to be afraid, but for him to be prepared. And we too are called to live prepared, because the challenges will continue until the end. But those who know their God will stand firm, resist and overcome, not by their own strength, but because they are sustained by the eternal God. If this message strengthened your faith and renewed your hope, don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear this word. Like, subscribe to the channel, and follow the next chapters of this journey through the life and visions of Daniel. The God who revealed the future to Daniel is the same one who is still in control today, and he is worthy of our trust.